perhaps it was Ian McShane who succinctly summed up a lot of people's perception of Game of Thrones when he said, "It's only tits and dragons."
Pardon my French.
But the millions who watch every week know there's much more drawing viewers in than just gratuitous nudity and impressive CGI. Now, I'll admit, the first few seasons of Game of Thrones were a little overly sexualized. I mean, it's not a show I'd want to watch with my parents, or even like on a first or second date, just a little awkward. And I know women who've said they couldn't get into the show because of that. But all of the subscription networks, HBO, Showtime, Cinemax especially, used this format to lure viewers in during the first few seasons and then tended to taper off the excessive nudity once the fan base was loyal. And of course, in later years of a series, they would bring it back out of desperation for the dwindling viewership. Yes, I'm talking to you, Dexter Season 7. Come on, you're better than this. I miss John Lithgow. But hell, now Netflix just cuts right to the chase and opens every new series they create with a sex scene. Because as we all know, sex sells and drives up ratings, even when it is just a glimpse of Dennis Fran's bare ass. But despite all of the gratuitous nudity, some have argued, and in some cases complained, that in the past few seasons of Game of Thrones, the pendulum has swung the other way and become more feminist with the emergence of many strong female characters taking control of their houses, like Cersei or Daenerys, or Yara or Lady Olenna. You could even argue that there is a slight correlation between Daenerys' Breaker of Chains storyline with the first wave of feminism movement in the 19th century, since there was a connection between the anti-slavery movement and the women's rights movement, with the groups at times working together for a common goal of equality. But I don't think the show is so much pushing a feminist message as it's just trying to tell the most interesting story it can. So how can a show known for exploiting female nudity actually be considered by some to be a feminist story? It all comes back to the characters. Take a show like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which broke new ground in the late 90s, not only by having a strong female empowerment message, but also by being one of the first network programs to show a lesbian kiss. No, not that one. That one. But the idea of Buffy was more about subverting expectation, by having the perceived damsel in distress, the blonde cheerleader, be the super powerful hero. She doesn't need rescuing, she can take care of herself. And while Buffy grew as a person and had story arcs over the 7 seasons, she was the Slayer from day one. She was always a strong, powerful woman. Well, except when Giles drugged her, but you had to. Now, going back to Game of Thrones, where this show really excels is how it's able to transform their characters multiple times throughout the run of the show, moving them from weak to strong, from good to evil and back again. Take a character like Jaime Lannister. Everybody hated him in the first season because, well, he did this. What a dick. But instead of pigeonholing Jaime into the role of villain, the writers slowly revealed more about his backstory and motivations, and put him through intense suffering. So the audience began empathizing with his situation. And then he had the whole Sam and Diane, will they, won't they thing with Brienne. Sweet, sweet Brienne. There's something about Brienne.
I love her, man!
So now, by season 7, you worry about Jaime when he decides to charge into certain death because you don't want him to die. The writers make you care about Jaime, even though, he's still the same guy that did this. The female characters on Game of Thrones have had similar winding journeys and actually have better story arcs than many of their male counterparts because their journeys have more room for growth. That's because when the series began, unlike Buffy, these weren't powerful women. They've had to fight for everything they've achieved. Even characters like Cersei Lannister or Catelyn Stark, who held prominent roles in the kingdoms, were still limited by the misogynist society. So for the show to go from having the women, at best, be just ladies of the house, to leading armies and strategizing battle plans was a huge revolution for women's rights in Westeros. But there's a difference between women rising to power and the ideals of the feminist movement, especially when that ascension to power involves excessive violence and mass murder. And unfortunately, for some reason, critics tend to associate violence towards men as being feminist. Sometimes that violence is justifiable, I get it. Ramsay was a prick. But that's not feminism. What they're showing is how war and violence hardens people, both male and female. This idea of bending or breaking your moral rules to win the war has become a theme this season. Both Sansa and Lady Olenna have commented on the weaknesses of honorable men and urged their allies to use force when necessary.
The lords of Westeros are sheep. Are you a sheep? No. You're a dragon. Be a dragon.
Now, don't get me wrong. There are definitely feminist ideas presented in the show.
Not just the boys. We can't defend the North if only half the population is fighting.
You expect me to put a spear in my granddaughter's hand?
I don't plan on knitting by the fire while men fight for me. I might be small, Lord Glover, and I might be a girl, but I am every bit as much a Northerner as you.
Indeed you are, my lady. No one is
And I don't
questioning
need your permission to defend the North. We'll begin training every man, woman, boy, and girl on Bear Island.
But if you say that the entire show has shifted towards a feminist message, and when people say that, they are usually saying that with a negative connotation, then you're cherry-picking those scenes and ignoring the rest. That's like saying Saved by the Bell was about the drug epidemic in American high schools.
Pills? You mean you really are taking drugs?
I need them.
Jesse, give me those.
I need them, Zach. I have to sing. I'm so excited. I'm so scared.
I'm scared too, Jesse. I'm scared too. I realize that in our current short attention span, 140 character world, that there's a tendency to quickly label something for simplicity. But that's doing the show a disservice. The writers have created an ensemble of interesting characters, both male and female, that drive the storylines and keeps the audience invested and on the edge of their seats. Characters, above all else, keeps us watching. Not dragons, not nudity, not overly preachy showrunners. And the reason we can have these debates about the show's message on feminism, or its depiction of the brutality of war, or IKEA's inevitable expansion into Westeros, is because of those characters and our fascination with their stories and their journeys. And that is a sign of great storytelling. You know, people don't get this worked up over something like The Blacklist.
You're a bitch.
Thanks for watching, and I want to give a special shout out to Spoiler Alert for sponsoring this video. Let me know what you think in the comments, and please like and subscribe. Thanks.